We would like to have more people, let's say, role models for our founders and soon to be founders. Shaun, you're with us.
Hello, hello. Sorry, keep going. You're
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Thank you. And as one of those very inspiring speakers, I would like to introduce Jatin, who is our guest today. So, Jatin, a couple of words about you.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Sandra. I think the topic of failure is very pertinent, and um, I'm unfortunately I have to say that I'm the right guy to speak on this.
Oh, don't say that. Come on. That's
uh,
it's a badge of honor. It's a badge of honor.
yeah. So I started my entrepreneurship journey about 15 years ago. I started a couple of companies back in the late 2000s. Which didn't do very well and had a variety of reasons which I was to discover later on of why they didn't do well. And a very quick tip on that is that it had everything to do only with me. And then I started my third company, which I sold in 2012, which was an e-commerce startup. And then I've been running my fourth company over the last 9 years, which is entirely self-funded without any external funding. And is a pretty reasonably large global company that we've built over the last decade or so. So NetScore started and closed down two businesses, sold one business, which was the third one, raised about $35 million somewhere in the middle, burned that $35 million somewhere in the middle as well, and had a couple of sweet successes to round everything off. And somewhere also went to Stanford Business School for my executive education. So that's a quick background about myself.
So wait, 35 million you burned. How many zeros was in that? Let me just make sure it's the right number.
Yeah, it's more than I would care to admit.
Well, you just admitted it. It's okay. I mean, I think people need to hear that because there's this notion in entrepreneurship that once you've got your first investor, you're gold, because then you're going to get a second investor, third investor, you're going to lead to a round, then the next round, the lead investor. And once you got the money, everything is set. The sky's the limit. But the reality is that most companies fail. They burn through cash. There's no product market fit. Nobody likes it. The product sucks. But nobody wants to talk about that. We don't really hear about that. We just hear about, the successes because it's going for a Series F or a Series G, or they keep going. They keep going. I mean, if you would just share, I mean, what was it like to have that where you have this money coming in, you're well funded, you're ready to take on the world, and then it just doesn't click?
Yeah, I think the dangerous notion that has gotten built in over the recent past is that the goalpost is raising funding. And what I've realized over my journey is that actually the moment you take funding, and especially a large round at that, the clock is ticking at a much accelerated pace. It's like if you remember the movie Inception, there are these bunch of astronauts who go to another planet. And
we're talking Interstellar, right? Inception's the dream one.
Interstellar. You're right, Interstellar. So
hope it wasn't a film startup. Go ahead.
These bunch of startups land up at another planet, and the time is 4 hours over there is 24 hours on Earth, or something like that, right? There's some very convoluted math over there. And what I've realized is that when you raise a round of funding, which is significant enough, the clock is ticking at a very accelerated pace, and you have to deliver results with such pressure on you that not many are able to achieve it. So the goal is not to raise funding. The goal is to create a successful business. Funding is only a tool to help you create a successful business. And raising funding means that you have your back against the wall because you have to deliver returns to the people who invested in you. And usually that's a very difficult process because you have to return some significant capital back to those investors in order to save your business, your reputation, and eventually become to create a business which generates return on capital employed, right, for those investors. So today, over the last 10 years, I realized that I don't want to raise capital. And I don't want that clock ticking where I always feel that I have my back against the wall. And I have not raised capital at all. In fact, with the success that we've had, there have been enough and more suitors, but we just don't think that we need capital, and we are happy to fund our growth with the growth that we see from customers and their money.
I mean, it's really just interesting you say that because, you know, you've done it. You've been in the trenches. And the one thing I see among so many entrepreneurs and people that want to be entrepreneurs is what I call like the Shark Tank effect, where that's all they want to do. They just want to, they watch Shark Tank, they tune in 20 minutes late and they change the channel before the next commercial break, and they're an expert and they're going to go out and raise money, and they're going to raise a ton of money. And you know, I always ask them, what are you going to do if you don't raise the money? And I get such looks of disdain. Well, I can't do it. This can't be done. It's impossible. I don't want to do it then. I mean, I there's a disconnect. I feel like if they're really interested in something, they're going to find a way and make it happen. Regardless, they're going to beg, borrow, and steal to make this objective, or, you know, to reach that objective, to make the fantasy a reality. But so many people these days, you know, they can't do it. And we're not talking like a later round. We're talking like a pre-seed round. They refuse to try. They refuse to even do anything else. And I get these emails and calls and texts at least once or twice a week, because I know a ton of people and everybody wants the investor. And, you know, my question is, you know, can you do it without an investor? And people don't want to try that. They think the money is an end all, which is why what you're saying, it's so important, because, you know, it's not the final step. It's just a little ingredient from the utility belt to get you to the final step. If you can get there, it's not guaranteed.
Absolutely. And you know, the biggest policy is that the moment you raise your investment, you're going to be successful. And most people have made that as the biggest goal of life. And that's the problem that I see in the ecosystem today, because that's a very, very slippery slope. You know, imagine that you were to take a loan from the bank, right? For whatever millions of dollars. I would imagine that it would be very difficult to sleep at night were you to take a very large loan and that you had to repay the loan. Now, the thing is that the cost of interest on that loan is usually lower than the returns that you need to generate for a capital investor in your business. So imagine you take a loan for $1 million, you probably need to pay 6 or 7 or 8% a year in order to make sure that those investors feel happy. But when you raise capital from a venture capitalist, or when you raise capital from an angel investor and so on, you need to give a bigger return, because that venture capitalist is betting on one success, but probably 9 failures. So that one success has to make up for those 9 failures. So imagine the amount of return that they expect from that one success, right? So I find it difficult to understand how it's easy to sleep when you've got $1 million from an investor, from a capital investor, versus a loan from a bank. I would imagine having a very large loan from the bank a problem, rather than feeling very comfortable about it. And I have never heard anybody bragging about how much loan they have from the bank, right? So they don't go to press, and they don't tell people how proud they are that they've got a loan of $1 or $5 million from the bank. It's usually a mark of deep concern that you have so much money being raised from the bank as a loan. It's practically the same game, only that the stakes are higher when you raise it from a venture capitalist.
That's actually very true. Like when I'm talking to our portfolio startups, I always tell them, okay, so at the moment that you've taken investors' money, that's the moment where all your problems just started. They didn't end, because when they see their bright and shiny future, okay, the investors are going to come and they're going to give us a couple of millions of dollars, but then the investors want the return of $100 million from this couple of millions. So the question is, are those startups even thinking about making those returns? But what was your story? I mean, from the very beginning, what was your first raise, or is it was 35 million as a first raise, or were you fundraising before? And how did the process go? And how did you feel? I mean, it's not how you're feeling now. How did you feel in the past during the process? Well, that's what's interesting.
Well, the first couple of ventures that I ran, I did not have a background which preceded me. So it was very, very difficult for me to raise any capital. And also the time was, my first company was in 2007. So venture capital, I was at that time in India. Now I stay in Europe. But at that time, the Indian ecosystem was not so well developed. So we hardly had angel investors. We hardly had venture capitalists. So we did it, we funded even then the companies by revenues from customers. The absolute beginning was friends and family, right? So they loaned a little bit of money, you know how it goes. So and we lost all that money. So 2007, from the time that I started the first venture until about 2010, I had burned through a lot of money of friends and family, and through two startups. So if I go back to that time, about 2010, I was quite certain that, I had my doubts about myself of whether I can even make it, And I remember having conversations with friends and family at that point of time where I was actively encouraged to go and look for a job. So that I can pay people back, and secondly, so that I can feel some sort of worth about myself, because I was feeling highly unworthy of having the ability to do anything. So it was a hard time, a very hard time. Then I started another company, which was an e-commerce company. And, in that company, we raised some pretty reasonable amount of money. And by 2012, our biggest competitor, we merged together, and the company essentially, even till today, dominates that space. So we were selling health and nutraceuticals, all the vitamins and proteins online. So the merged entity still dominates the space in India. So that was a I would say a fortunate success, because even before we sold it, about a couple of months before that, we were it was a very difficult time, and we weren't sure if we would be able to raise a bigger round, which was needed to fund our growth at that point of time. So yeah, it's very difficult till the time you have your first success to have the wisdom to look at these moments and take that in perspective. When I had my first success, I resolved to myself that, I would try and give back to the community and help entrepreneurs not go through as difficult a journey as I had to go through. Because essentially I went through 6 years with zero income, which was very difficult.
What was motivating you? What was driving you? Because a lot of people would say, like, okay, whatever, I go and get a job like in the bank or somewhere. So what did you have inside that didn't allow you to stop, to give up? And how did you move on?
I think fundamentally, I had at least some conviction that the ideas that I have and the vision that I have for whatever I do has some place in the world. And I used to find it incredibly difficult to believe that this rejection that I'm facing is going to remain there forever. So I always felt that it's a matter of time that the tides will change and the winds will blow in a different direction. And the question was, can I survive that difficult time? And even, after we had the first success, even after that, there have been a lot of very difficult times. In business, you always go through ups and downs. But you always try and build a larger vision. And even today, with what we are doing with our company, we're building towards a very different kind of a vision. And most people don't think that's going to happen. So, you have to really, really believe that your conviction is going to be right, and then hope that it turns out right. And there is no proof one way or the other, right?
Yeah. Shaun, what's your recipe, by the way? So if you're rejected by everyone and if no one understands what you're doing, what is that you are doing? So what happens next?
I mean, it comes down to you. I mean, there's been nothing that has value that's been universally accepted at the start. That's throughout history. Everybody, you know, always laughs at an idea until it becomes commonplace and accepted. And I feel like entrepreneurs have to be innovators in that way, and scientists in that way, and visionaries in that way, and just really understand that, like, this is how it's going to happen, and I'm going to prove it to everyone. You have to have something sort of that, you know, it's real. It's just a matter of showcasing it. I mean, one of my favorite stories is from, you know, Robert Goddard, who's like the father of modern rocketry, and he was doing rocketry at a time when, you know, the world said it's impossible. You can't launch something into space. You can't break the atmosphere. You know, the New York Times, you know, ridiculed him, you know, as he doesn't understand high school science. What is he wasting his time for? And without him, you wouldn't have the modern world, because, you know, he believed in what he was doing. He was going to keep experimenting until he proved the point. And because he proved the point, we were able to get satellites and the technology we have now, and the space program, and Blue Origin, and go to the moon, and have the telescopes. But, you know, so many people give in to what others say. And I feel like it's sort of like, especially now with social media, it's like a mass extinction of ideas, because you could have the next game-changing business. You'll throw it on Twitter, you'll throw it on Facebook, you'll throw it on Instagram, and because you don't have any likes or comments or shares or activities, you're going to automatically assume no one's going to want it. You're not going to feel like you should do it, and you'll give up. And I feel like a lot of the great people, if they had that back in the day, we wouldn't have what we have now, because they listened to a mediocre majority. We listen to people that don't even care about anything, that think they're so-called experts, that like to just tell other people that's impossible, you're wasting your time, don't do it. And just so many people don't have this inner resilience that can say, no, I'm going to try it anyway. They're just going to listen to you know, the majority. They're just going to listen to what strangers that they'll never meet in their entire life are going to say. And they're going to give, you know, just, you know, real credence to their these opinions that don't matter. So, you know, even being, you know, an entrepreneur, whether you're raising funding or not, I mean, you have some goal, and it's your goal is to transform what's in your head into reality, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's you doing something that you want to do, whether it's a speech, whether it's mentoring someone. There's something that you want to do, and you're not going to be fulfilled on a mental level, on a personal level, until you get it out of your system. And a lot of people dull that sense, because, you know, they can't accept failure. One, because society has conditioned people to just, you know, fear failure. You know, it's conditioned from when you grow up, it's conditioned in schools. You know, the worst thing you could do is get an F, you know, or in my case, an I, which was an incomplete. That was even worse than a failure. It just wasn't there. But it just, you fear this failure. You run from it. You'll do anything. You don't want to fail in front of your boss. You don't want to fail in front of your teacher. You don't want to fail in front of your friends, your parents. And with this mentality, nobody wants to take risks. Nobody wants to try. And if entrepreneurship is anything, it's taking a risk. It's going out there and, you know, betting it all on yourself and hoping that what you're doing is going to pay off. So, yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to. You know, do you have it in you, and are you strong enough to keep going, you know, regardless if the world is against you? And another question I always ask is, are you passionate enough about this that you would still do it if there was no funding? And even if there was no chance of making money, you loved it so much you wanted to do it. And a vast majority of people would just say, nah, you know, I'm only in it for the money, you know. But the people that are like, oh, if I can do this every day, and wait, someone's going to buy it, someone's going to pay me to do it, that's the greatest thing ever. And that percentage of people is getting smaller and smaller, you know, because everybody now, you know, they have to, if you're an entrepreneur, you automatically have to have a Ferrari, and you have to have a mansion. You have to be, you know, the keynote speaker, and you have to be on the cover of Success Magazine. And you have to do all this stuff. And you don't do any of that. You just have to focus on what you want to do that is going to give you personal fulfillment, one, make money, you know, which I'd say is tied with number one, but you have to do it. If you can have that world where you do both, then it's like, it's perfect. You know, I feel like there's three things that people skip over because they just want the Ferrari and the money and the cover on the magazine. One, having people they can trust that they can work with, that are awesome to work with. because most people now, it's terrible to find good people to work with. People are flaky. They're not professional. And, some of them you just can't trust to get a simple task done. So you want to have people you can work with. Two, you want to have something that you enjoy doing, because entrepreneurship, for whatever your venture is going to be a 7-day-a-week gig, 365 days a year. So you really have to enjoy doing it. If you don't feel like doing it on Saturday or Sunday because it's the weekend, there's going to be an issue, especially if you're early stage and you can't hire someone to help you out and do it. And three, you just want to be able to have something that you can look back on years later and say, I'm proud I took a shot. I'm proud I risked it. I didn't care that I didn't make money those years. I didn't care that I missed out on my friend's, holiday trip that he invited me on. I don't care that I couldn't go to the birthday party, because I was doing something that was so meaningful to me and I took a chance. And the vast majority of people cannot take that chance. Again, they're afraid of failure. I had a friend, I won't mention his name, but a very successful entrepreneur, but not always. And the story with him was that he was on the cover. He was in a magazine where it was one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. And the day he was in the magazine, he couldn't, his shares got diluted. So he couldn't buy a ticket to go to the subway to go get the magazine, because he lost everything on that day. He's a super cool, super relaxed guy, because he's had 25 years of major failures and, successes, but it's always a yin and yang. It's always a balancing act. And I feel like people are conditioned to be like, once you got the one, you made it, you're in, there's my star in the sky and everything's good. The movie's over, roll credits, I'm good for life. And it's like, you're 22 years old. You got your first customer, relax, So yeah. And I want to also take this opportunity that to open it up to the chat. If you have questions for any of us, throw them in, we'll answer them. If you want to network, throw in your LinkedIn's, feel free to connect with one another. We got some founders, VCs, we got a good connections in here. So leave it in the chat. We already got the first one. All right. Excellent discussion. Is bootstrapping for high growth potential startup a right strategy to consider? Take it away, Mr. Modi.
Well, so much depends on the context on this question, Murali. If you're able to, this is my personal opinion, okay? If you can fund your growth, what growth you want to achieve, by what your customers are paying you, then definitely by no means, I would say, don't pick up any money from outside. But if you have the chance to dominate your category, right? And if that's what you want to go after, and if bootstrapping cannot cut it, I would say then you should pick up the money. And then the other thing that you need to think about is competition. So if your competition is going to crush you because they can cut prices endlessly, or they can hire the best talent, which you probably won't be able to, because you're bootstrapping and therefore you need to keep a tight tap on your resources. So there is so much of context to this question that needs to be determined. What's the market? What's the competition? What's the talent looking like? What's the overall potential for your company? What does raising capital really mean for you? What does it mean to you for your professional as well as your personal life? What is it that you want? Do you want freedom versus do you want, do you want 5% of whatever, 200 million, or do you want, 100% of 20 million? So there is so many different things that you need to consider in order to be able to give a more considered answer to this, I would imagine. What do you think, Sandra?
Well, as I always tell to my portfolio startups, the later you take the money from the venture capitalists, the better, because till the moment you've taken any money from venture capitalists, you're 100% driving your car. Then business angels are coming. Business angels aren't actually influencing your decisions a lot. Like good business angels would be helping by opening the doors and offering some expertise. But then you get your first venture funds. And this first venture funds, they have some idea on how they're going to exit. So they have some idea on how they're going to earn money. And this idea might be kind of from slightly to completely different from this idea that you have in your head. So at this point, they actually start managing your startup. And the more money you're taking from the venture capital, like big venture capital firms, the less decisions you're able to make by yourself. And if you started probably something with a big vision of becoming like a decacorn and grow this company and be the like founder for the next 30 years, the venture capitalists can just have other opinion. They can just think, okay, so after like 7 years, we are going to sell this company to the giant X on the market, and we are also going to change the CEO because we don't see this person as a fit when we sell this company to another company at the market. And that's it, basically, you're done. Of course, I mean, if you're scaling, if you're growing this unicorn, you won't be able to do this without the venture capital in most of the cases. Well, there are cases in history where the startups managed to do it. However, the later you invite the venture money in, the more field for decision making you're basically having as a startup.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on context. I've always been of the mindset that if I can do it myself and take it as far as I can, I'm going to do it, you know? And it's also because I'm also a little stubborn. So I don't want someone kind of influencing my decisions and telling me I can't do something, even after they've written the check and they kind of have more power to tell me to do something. Yeah, it's always been about just, you know, I'm going to take it as far as I possibly can take it. And, you know, we'll see what happens because, you know, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Nobody can see what's going to happen until, you know, it actually happens. So all your revenue, your projections, your strategic partnerships, you know, all that stuff. That's great. It's great in the deck, but until you actually do it, you know, it's ethereal, you know, so it's much better to take it on your own. I mean, I've always been in this mentality. I have an idea. I'm just going to start it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do it. And I'm just not really going to care what a VC thinks or an investor thinks. But, you know, when I've done it that way, I've had people approach me, you know, based on what I'm doing. So, you know, I feel like do what you have to do and see where it goes, you know, and then you can you would know better than us to make the right decision or not, just because you're in the captain's chair, so to speak. And it's a matter of just being the right fit. I mean, if it's something where, you know, you can reach the next stage with an influx of capital, then yeah. But, you know, if you can reach the next stage without an influx of capital, it takes a little longer. I mean, it comes up to you to make the decision.
Well, basically, it's always a balance between like the time that you're spending on reaching different goals on the markets and the actual necessity of the investment at this specific point. Because it's not that you don't need the venture capital; it's that sometimes startups are taking the venture capital way too early, when they don't actually have any idea what they're going to do with this money. I mean, as you mentioned, they have it in their slides. So we are going to spend like 300K on marketing and then 100K on tech and like $500,000 something else. And then they hit the reality, which says like, okay, so how is this exactly you're going to spend this 300K in marketing and get the results that you promised in this deck to investors? And then it's like, oh, okay, probably we don't have the broad market fit yet. You both mentioned very interesting things of doing things alone and versus and doing things with other people. So, Jatin, I'm curious about your story. Did you have any co-founders, or were you a solo founder from the very beginning? And how did these hardships, like the hard part in the very beginning, affected your relationships?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So in 3 out of my 4 ventures, I didn't have a co-founder. I did it alone. In the e-commerce company that we sold, I did have a co-founder. Fortunately, the relationship with him still continues till date on very warm note. I think for me, when I was going through the difficult time from about 2006, 2007 until about 2012, it was very difficult for me personally. And it affected all kinds of relationships because essentially at some point of time, one, I had no money. And secondly, I also somewhere deep down inside of me, I wasn't sure whether this is going to work, because I had no success before that. So I would imagine that I had a crisis of confidence within myself, and it affected all kinds of relationships, whether it's romantic, friendships, and it was very difficult to when there's a part of you which you feel is where you just don't feel realized in, it's very difficult to hold happy relationships in general. But I think once you get past that, I think at least for me, how it happened is that I needed my first success to feel some validation for myself, just feel confident about my own abilities and my own convictions. And then after that, it turned out much better, because then once you have that confidence in your convictions, then people who align with those convictions keep getting associated with you. And therefore, your relationships actually get only better because you keep attracting the right people rather than all sorts of people. So yeah, I mean, it's when you're a first time founder at an early stage, it's hard. It's very hard. Man, what can I say? You really need to perhaps have a very strong support system, right? Off Baltic Sandbox or other startups like that helping you out, so you can speak about it and really talk about it, because it's so difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel when you're going through when you're in the trenches. It's very difficult to see that.
And I'm just curious, if you would have all the knowledge, all the experience that you have today, if you would have like 15 years ago, would you be building what you're building like alone by yourself, or would you be trying to find some co-founders to go through this together?
Well, personally, I found it quite sad. I mean, if I find the right co-founder, I would be always open for it. So for my e-commerce venture, I had a fantastic co-founder. And even today, were the stars to align and he was to say that we should do a venture again together, I would do it with him. So I think it really depends on the person. I would rather go it alone than have a bad relationship. So it's like getting stuck in a bad marriage, right? You don't want that. But if you have the right partner, then it's no problem. So I think even today, I mean, there are different pieces of the business in our current business. So I run a B2B marketing company, and there are multiple practices in the business. And for some of those practices, we have partners, so they are not like co-founders per se, but they are partners. You can imagine partners in McKinsey or PwC, right? So it's the partnership structure. So in a way, when they become partners in a particular practice, it's very much like being married to them. And because you've dated them for a while, you've worked with them when they were not partners, you've been able to establish a working relationship. You've been able to establish, the same values, whether you align on them or not, whether you align on the vision. And then it's much easier to work together should you get married, whether as a co-founder, as a partner. So, just like my answer last time to Murli, I don't think there is a golden rule to it. I think it really depends on the context, on the person. If it's a great partnership, it's super successful. If it's a bad partnership, you're always stressed in life and you're never happy. So I don't even care whether the venture, I doubt the venture will become successful, first of all. And even if it does, I don't know if I want to go through 15 years of my life just feeling unhappy.
So I have a question, just because I'm fascinated by just personal endurance. It's a topic I always write about, and it's a topic I try to, help others with, because it's very lacking. So for that 6-year time period, just being in the trenches, no income, grinding it out, what kept you going, and what essentially advice can you give to someone who, can't even imagine themselves doing six weeks, let alone 6 years? So a two-pronged question. What kept you going, and what advice can you give?
What kept me going was the strength of my convictions, and the fact that I really, even till date, whatever vision that I want to work with, I believe that the world needs that. And I have absolutely no doubt about it. So I'm willing to go through some pretty significant pain in order to go there, and at some point of time, you also develop endurance to pain. It's like all the stuff that bothers you. Like, for example, you go to a gym, right? You pump weights the first day. You want to feel terrible because everything hurts. But over a period of time, you develop an endurance to pumping weights, right? And then it's not so difficult after a while. You can go through pretty significant pain and not really feel the burn of it. And I think that pain endurance is very important in entrepreneurship in general, because we come in, a lot of people come in looking for the riches, but they don't understand just how long and how hard it can be, and how long it can take. It probably takes more than a decade for you to have one success, right? And Shaun, what was the second question for advice, right? The I would say the biggest advice I would have is that you should do what you really, if you really think what you are doing is going to genuinely add value to the world. That kind of conviction is very important for us, for a company. Because you see, what's happening in the world today is that most people are jumping into startups because it's the next big thing. So right now, everybody is doing fintech, right? Everybody is doing something to do with the metaverse suddenly. So everybody is launching an NFT now, right? Or everybody is launching a cryptocurrency. And I'm not really sure if that's going to succeed, because it's not built on any real conviction. It's just really cool right now. 10 years ago, when I started my e-commerce venture, e-commerce was really cool. And I have to admit that a part of me jumped into it because it was really cool. But that doesn't guarantee any success at all. So, so I suppose it really means, if it really means something personally to you, you have a way higher chance of success, even if it won't be in the coolest sector, even if it won't be the biggest company out there. I would say it's okay to have a smaller company which can be super successful in an area of interest that you care about, adding value to the world in the way that you would want it to be. Because that's what really gives you conviction. It gives you clarity. It gives you satisfaction. And it gives you conviction, and people see that and they align with you when they see that.
Well, it really strikes a chord just because, everyone hops on the bandwagon, as you say. Like as soon as the metaverse announcement was made, everybody I know is, we're investing in the metaverse. We're going to start a metaverse company. Nobody knows what the metaverse is. Okay. Nobody knows. And it's same thing with NFT or DAOs or Web 3.0 or IoT or crypto, ICO. Everybody likes to hop on what everyone else is doing. And I feel like that you need to have an original idea, as you said, that's just meaningful work to you, because I'm a big proponent of having a proper why so you can survive anyhow. And I feel like, as a founder, your company is that proper why. That's what it is, because it's not a fun journey. It sucks. Everyone gets everything ready to go, and then, okay, where's the customers? I don't know. I did everything right. Where are the customers, and where are the investors, and how come no one's hitting me up, and how come no one's emailing me? I have a great idea. And, it's not instantaneous. And we live in such an on-demand culture and an instantaneous culture where, there's a Slack channel for this and an app for that, but you can't summon the meaning that will let you get through the tough times. And being a founder is all tough times. I mean, it's one mountain after the other. There's a Haitian proverb that says, at the top of a mountain are more mountains. So, people need to realize they spend all this time climbing this massive personal obstacle, this mountain, and then they realize they get to the top. There's an infinite number of others that are awaiting them. So you do have to have something meaningful, and you do have to have something that will give you that strength to keep climbing. And I think it's super dope, and I appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah,
I'm just curious. Yeah, go on, Dan.
Yeah, everybody's right now, the flavor of town is superhero movies, but I don't see Christopher Nolan trying to make a superhero movie. Well, he made it 15 years ago, right? But right now he cares about stories that he cares about. And the people who love him just love him because of that. It's the same. It's like you have to really care about what you're doing rather than just get onto the NFT or the metaverse. which is good to be. I mean, it's actually kind of on a flip side, it's a little bit concerning, isn't it? It's like, can you imagine the smartest people of the planet will be working on only virtual reality for the next 20 years?
It's 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 the new dark age. Everyone's doing it. It's yeah, and again, it's something where everyone's all excited, but in my opinion, all the books and movies that that talked about this 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, they were like dystopian books. It wasn't like, oh, you go in the metaverse and everything's there. It's like Snow Crash, Neuromancer, the Matrix, all that stuff. So yeah.
I'm just curious, continuing with the metaverse topic, because everyone is discussing it, like metaverse this, metaverse that, how the world is going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, or something. I think that's very similar to this blockchain situation. When everyone was saying like blockchain this, blockchain that, without actually figuring out that blockchain is a platform and a tool, and so is the metaverse. I mean, it won't change, it might change the way how people communicate. It won't change the way what people would be communicating about, and the need for communication and so on. Just one question I wanted to actually to ask you both. So when you are talking about this, resilience and persistence and other things like this, is it, how do you feel? Is it something that you're, an outstanding personality and other people are not like you, they're different and so on? Or is it just a matter of, daily work, doing things day by day, despite the fact that, nothing is working, the result is not even close, but you're just like persistently doing your parts like 6 hours a day, every day? Or is it some sort of, I don't know, a gift?
And I'm interested in your answer to this.
Oh, okay. I'll start it off. Yeah, I feel that it's not really a gift. Anyone can do it. But people have been constrained again by just the institutions. Essentially, I mean, I come from a background of being a failure, so it's easy for me because I failed at so many things. I failed on Jeopardy in front of 10 million people. I failed at school. Growing up, I was, always getting, I'd get an F and it'd be like, all right, great, 100%, not a single one right. I'd fail at sports teams. I'd fail when I played video games. I was just failing at everything. So when I finally had a success, it was so meaningful to me. And I was like, I want to do this again. And I feel like you want to, you have to go through the mud and the muck to get to these wins. And once you at least get one, I can do this again. It's not so bad. I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm going to go after what I want, and I'm not going to let anything or anyone stop me. And if you do that long enough, and I've been doing it my whole life, you reach a point where it's just like, guess it didn't work, or it's only money, or I wonder what else I could have done. Let me think about it. Was it a design problem, an execution problem, a launch problem? It's just something that, as a serial reader and as someone that writes a lot, if you look throughout history, I mean, whether it's military history, whether it's scientific history, whether it's just anything with human beings where they have to struggle, it's always been the people that kept going, that's the secret. And, one of my favorite, kept going stories is Ernest Shackleton, who I recommend everyone look up because, he was trying to get to the South Pole and got stuck in the ice and was stranded and had to figure out a way to get help in the middle of nowhere, literally on an ice shelf. And it's one of the greatest survival stories, I'd say, in history. And it's so inspiring to read because, after doing everything, someone asked him, it was so difficult. How'd you do it? And they said, difficulties are just things to overcome. That's it. I mean, that's it. Anyone else would be like, oh, we're done. We're in the middle of an ice shelf in the middle of nowhere and winter's approaching and we have no help, no radio, nothing. And it's like, well, we got to do something. And I feel like you have to have that kind of mentality, to keep going with everything. So I feel like it's not ingrained. I feel like it can be learned and you have to experiment and you have to experience pain and loss and suffering. But as long as Jatin said, as long as it's meaningful, if it's meaningful, it's fine. Okay, it didn't work, but I'm going to keep trying again. And a lot of people don't have that because like, oh, it hurts too much. I rather just be comfortable. I rather not deal with it. So my philosophy is always to go forward and, keep going. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And everything is a learning process, and you just keep learning. Now, it's better to learn through the mistakes of others if you can, but if not, just you can't be broken by it. You have to keep going. So that's my thoughts on it. Take it away, Mr. Modi. I'm interested to hear your response.
Well, well, I'm quite certain that, you know, I'm super duper ordinary. Like I see smart people, genuinely smart people all around me all the time. And I always stop back to admire, how talented they are at different things. And I don't think that growing up in life, I ever thought of myself as really talented at anything. And I have to be very candid about that. Um, uh, what I do think that I've managed to grow, and what I do attribute a lot of success that has come my way is to good habits. Is that, number one is that you show up every day. And sometimes you really hate showing up. You hate uh, uh, when it's very difficult times, you hate showing up. You would much rather either quit on it or stay home. So I think the first thing is showing up, and then there are a bunch of habits that personally I have found very helpful for myself, like meditation or yoga and stuff like that, which I've found very, very centering to maintain equanimity in crazy times. And yeah, so there are certain habits that I've inculcated over time. They all of them are just pure work. None of them are easy, and you have to do them daily. And I've found that all of those habits have helped me go through some very difficult times and through good ones as well. So even when there are good times, you don't have, like, personally, I don't, I'm not jumping on the top of the roof. It's very clear to me that this is ephemeral, right? Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, and it's important to be equanimous in success or with failure. So that's what I've found personally working for me. But I realize it's very, very different for very different people, right? Some people love the rush of success, and they can find themselves very depressed when they get some failure. Um, for me, I find myself pretty much similar, whether it's success or failure, now over many years of work.
Shaun, you go. You
No,
understand?
I was just saying, no, it's great. I mean, you have to have something, to keep you going. And the habits for the second part of your life are developed in the first part of your life. So, what you do today is going to influence tomorrow. And essentially, you can influence the future, because if you decide to do something that's more constructive than just being lazy, you're going to have a better tomorrow. You're going to make more effort into something that is going to improve your life, maybe in a small microscopic way, but those add up. So it's very easy to separate, the bad habits from the good habits, but it's very hard to act on them. And I feel like the action is what matters. I mean, and you have to have this, going back to the endurance, the resilience. I'm reminded of two different stories, both from like early 20th century, where Thomas Edison's lab exploded in a giant fireball, and he sat there on the grass watching it and enjoying it, knowing that isn't all of his work is done, because at the end of the day he'd have to restart again. But he's like, there's nothing I can do. He just accepted it because there was a giant fire and all this chemicals and equipment just exploded. For Orson Scott Martin, who's the creator of Success Magazine, this is late 1890s. He was writing his book, and his house caught fire, and his manuscript was inside his house. So as he was sitting on the sidewalk watching his house burn, he started writing the book again from memory. And these are kind of things that most people are like, oh, I've done so much work, I can't do it, I have to move on. But if you really want to do something and it's meaningful, and you want to bring it into the world no matter what, nothing's going to stop you. And I feel everything that's a good habit helps with that kind of mentality. And I always encourage everyone to keep working on something that is meaningful and that is going to help them, and that is going to, you don't set out to save the world. You just set out to save yourself. But if you save yourself, you save the world. That's a quote from Campbell from Hero with a Thousand Faces, and I feel like everyone should know it. Tattoo it on their eyelids, you know. So yes, that's all I had to say.
Okay, yeah. So basically, if we're talking about like the New Year's resolutions, because a lot of people during the last 2 weeks, I guess, made a lot of New Year's resolutions on the 1st of January, and then on the 3rd of January, they figure it's okay. Probably it's not. Some of those resolutions should go away because it's hard to keep up with them every day. And now it's what, 15th, 17th, so probably 90% of the resolutions already have gone away. But if we're talking about the founders, I say that's probably should be one of your most important New Year's resolution, doing something every day constantly. If you can't, you won't be able to reach this goal straight away. You won't be able to reach your founding goal in like 2 weeks, 1 year, even 2 years, sometimes even 10 years. So being a founder is a process. Being a founder is a way. Being a founder, it's not like an immediate success and immediate results. And probably if you are this like true passionate founder, and if you're moving towards your goal, the only thing that can help you to survive during this, ugly years of having no money, having not being famous, not having co-founders and everything, is actually try to enjoy the process. Try to enjoy the process of going towards your goal, of doing things as a process of learning, as a process of as a process of your life, basically, because that's what it is at some point.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's New Year's resolutions. I never make them, because the fact is to me that why do I have to wait till an arbitrary date that we created just to give me, an excuse to do something? I could do it today. I could start right now. I don't have to. If I have something I want to do, I'm going to just do it. I'm going to resolve to do it immediately. I don't have to wait till the next January 1st. And essentially you want to do things that are difficult, because, the things that are simple are easy. You want to set out to endeavor to become mentally stronger, more resilient, able to keep going no matter what, and to fail. I mean, failure is the best teacher, because nothing teaches you to pick up and keep going again after you failed. I mean, Henry Ford says failure is an opportunity to begin again more intelligently. And again, you don't have to wait till next year. I'm sure he wasn't saying, well, the car failed, I'm going to wait till next year to try the Model T. He immediately set out and doing it again. So I mean, I always encourage everyone, to go after what they want, no matter what anybody else thinks. And I always encourage everyone to if you're going to suffer for something, make sure it's something that's worth it to you, instead of waiting in a line at the DMV, or, being stuck at the airport because you had to go to Monaco for some reason right now. Like, do something that, keeps you going every day, because that's what it's about. There's, the people that make it happen, the people that watch it happen, and the vast majority who wonder what happened, and you have to choose which one of those three people you want to be. And I'm always in the camp of making it happen, although a lot of times I watch it happen, but I never wonder what happened. I never just unplug from everything and just sit there and get lost in, Netflix and don't peek my head up for 6 months, so it's really something where, we all have it in us to accomplish the goals that we set for ourselves. And I think the higher goals we set, the better. And if we fail at them, we fail higher than anybody else who never tried. And most people are not even trying. So that's what I have to say about that.
Fascinating, Shaun. Well, I definitely have a New Year resolution, or New Year goal, you can say. We are trying to build we have a vision for the world for the next 50 years, which we're trying to bring about. And I'm new in Vilnius since the pandemic began, which is when I shifted over here to Vilnius. And we're trying to build a core team over here in Vilnius. So we're hiring for a few positions over here. And I think one of the things that we are really focusing on this year is building a great core team, which is going to take us to this journey of the next 50 years. So yeah, so that is one thing which I'm looking forward to. I keep thinking about how we can attract and get the right people. who will care about this vision first of all, and then endeavor with us to go along towards it. So I think we use always, even in the company, we use every end of year as a great reflection of the year which has gone by, just to encapsulate in a few very simple words what we have learned, what has gone well and what has not. But also to set one or two simple goals, because in the largest of 50 years, 1 year is actually very microscopic, right? It's just 2% of the time. So it's not a very long time. So if we land up with 2-3 solid core team members in Vilnius over the next 1 year, I think it'll be a super successful year.
If you go remotely, consider me in. Vilnius is too cold. Too cold.
You're joking. It's only -3 today. It's like positively warm.
Temperature shouldn't have a minus number. They should have a plus, okay? And sunny and everything.
Okay. I know this Miami ranting all the time. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for the conversation today. It was amazing. And well, from what we see, judging by the reaction of our audience, it was really great as well. Jatin, thanks you for sharing, because that was just beautiful. The things that you could share with other founders, the things that founders could relate to and think, okay, basically I'm in the same position right now. And if I'm experiencing something bad right now, if I'm experiencing some failure, it doesn't mean that it's going to be like this for the next 2 years or 5 years or 6 years. It's one perfect day, the sun is going to shine bright near me and I'm going to be the successful founders and so on. So personal thanks from me for this conversation. It was great.
Thank you, Sandra. Really appreciate it. You were wonderful as a host, and thanks, Shaun. Great to meet you. Have a wonderful
day. No, thank you both. I mean, again, there's a common thing now in society, whether you're a founder or not, where we parade our successes and we conceal our poverties, and we have to go the other way, because people need to learn about how hard it is and the struggles and the failures, because that's how you get to success. That's how you get there. So thank you for sharing it. I mean, it was wonderful, and I don't say this enough, but I'm inspired. So thank you. It was really cool.
Thank you. Have a great time of the day, whichever.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. We'll see you.